There comes a moment in every relationship when silence enters the room. And let's be honest, it doesn't always come from peace. Sometimes that silence feels heavy, like distance quietly slipping in between two people. In that moment, the question isn't really about him, it's about you. How do you respond? Do you let that gap grow wider, or do you use it as a chance to transform? You see, silence is not the enemy. It's a mirror that reflects your patience, your self-trust, and your emotional clarity. Most people rush to fill the space, sending another text, demanding an answer, chasing after reassurance. But I've learned something over the years. When a man pulls away, the wisest thing you can do is pause. Now, pause doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've chosen to stand in your own center instead of letting his silence throw you off balance. Think of it like this. When the wind shakes the branches of a tree, the roots don't panic. They hold. They ground. That's what the pause does for you. I knew a woman once who practiced this. Her partner suddenly went quiet for days. Everything inside her wanted to call, to beg for answers, to demand his presence. Instead, she breathed, sat with the discomfort, and reminded herself, my worth isn't hanging on his response. Days later, he returned, not to excuses, but to her calm presence. And that calm was what gave him the safety to open up again. That's the secret. The pause creates space. Space for him to feel, space for him to miss you, and most importantly, space for you to return to yourself. In that stillness, you stop handing over your peace to someone else's moods. You begin to see clearly. So the next time silence enters, don't rush to fill it. Breathe. Let the pause do its work, because sometimes the quietest response speaks the loudest truth.
Let me share something most people overlook. Before you ever open your mouth, before a single word is spoken, people already feel you. They feel your energy. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room where no one said anything, but you just knew something was off? Maybe tension, maybe warmth. It was unspoken, but undeniable. That's because energy is the language before language. And whether we like it or not, it speaks louder than the words we carefully choose. Now, here's where it gets tricky, especially in relationships. When you're anxious, when you're desperate for reassurance, you can say, "I'm fine," 1,000 times, but the energy behind it will betray you. That restless frequency pushes people away, not because you're unworthy, but because neediness never feels safe. On the other hand, when your inner world is grounded, when you breathe deeply, when you carry yourself with calm assurance, that energy draws people closer without you even trying. I once knew a woman who realized this truth the hard way. Her partner had started to pull back. She didn't bombard him with texts. Instead, she turned inward. She journaled, she meditated, she tended to her own peace. And here's the fascinating part. When he returned, he couldn't explain it, but he said, "I just feel safer around you now." What had changed? Not her words, her energy. So ask yourself, what is your energy saying right now? Does it whisper calm, or does it scream fear? Because trust me, people may forget your exact words, but they will never forget how your presence made them feel. Remember this, you don't have to force connection. You only have to tend to your inner state. When you're rooted, others feel it. When you're whole, you become magnetic, not by chasing, but simply by being.
We live in a culture that worships speed. Swipe fast, text fast, fix fast. But the soul doesn't move at that pace. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do in love isn't to act quickly, it's to pause. Let me tell you a story. A woman I once knew had been with her partner for 2 years. They laughed together, dreamed together, and shared a quiet closeness. Then one day, his messages slowed. The calls stopped. His presence began to fade like mist in the morning. Every part of her wanted to act. Her mind raced. What did I do wrong? Should I call him? Should I drive to his house? But in the middle of that storm, a softer voice inside her whispered, "Wait." So she did. She sat with the discomfort. She breathed through the ache. She reminded herself, my worth is not measured by how quickly he answers me. 3 days later, he returned, not with excuses, but with tears. He had been carrying the weight of family struggles, too afraid to burden her. What brought him back wasn't her chasing, it was her calm. Her pause gave him the safety he needed to open up. That's the power of the pause. It's not passivity, it's not indifference, it's self-mastery. By resisting the urge to chase, she kept her clarity. By slowing down, she allowed the truth to reveal itself. So, here's my question for you. The next time someone pulls away, will you react with panic, or will you dare to pause? Because in that pause lies your freedom. And sometimes your silence speaks the safety they didn't even know they were searching for.
Now, let's be real. Taking a pause doesn't mean you sit in silence forever. At some point, maybe 48 to 72 hours later, you may feel it's time to gently reopen the door. But here's the secret. How you communicate in that moment matters just as much as the pause itself. Most people make the mistake of reaching out with panic or pressure. Long paragraphs, endless questions, or demands for clarity. And what does that energy do? It pushes the other person further away. But when your message comes from steadiness instead of desperation, it changes everything. Here's an example of what that might look like. Imagine sending something simple like, "Hey, I noticed we've been a little quiet lately. I value our connection, and I'm here when you're ready to talk. In the meantime, I'm taking care of myself." Do you feel the difference? That kind of message is open without being needy. It offers presence without losing self-respect. You're not begging for attention, you're extending an invitation. A door is open, but you're not standing there holding your breath waiting for them to walk through it. This kind of communication has 2 goals. First, it keeps the channel open, because healthy relationships are built on honesty, not games. Second, it protects your center. You're not handing over your peace in exchange for their reply. You're reminding yourself, I can care without collapsing. I can reach out without losing myself. So the next time you feel ready after a pause, ask yourself, Am I speaking from fear or from clarity? From need or from respect? Because when your words rise from a grounded place, they not only invite connection, they also remind you of the strength you've built in the silence.
We often treat rejection like the final verdict on our worth. Someone pulls away, someone ghosts us, and immediately the mind whispers, "It must be me. I wasn't enough." But here's a truth that took me years to understand. Rejection is not always rejection. Sometimes it's redirection. When someone withdraws, it doesn't automatically mean you failed. It may say more about their own capacity, or their lack of it, than about your value. In fact, many times their distance is simply life's way of asking, how strong are your roots? Will you chase what's leaving, or will you grow where you stand? Let me give you a story. A woman once told me about the heartbreak of being ghosted. One day, her partner was fully present, full of promises and plans, and the next, nothing. No calls, no explanation, just silence. She spent weeks blaming herself, replaying every conversation in her head. But over time, she began to realize the deeper wound wasn't his disappearance, it was the abandonment she had carried since childhood. His exit pressed on an old bruise. And here's the beautiful part. She chose to face that wound instead of trying to cover it with his attention. She went to therapy, wrote down her fears, and learned to soothe herself instead of waiting for someone else to do it. Months later, when he reappeared, she wasn't the same woman. She listened, she understood, and then she let him go. Not out of anger, but from clarity. His leaving had led her back to herself. So remember this, sometimes what feels like rejection is really protection. Sometimes the silence you didn't want is the space you needed. And sometimes a closed door isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a truer one.
There's an old story from the East I want to share with you. A monk was sitting by the riverbank when he saw a scorpion fall into the water. Without hesitation, he reached in and pulled it out. But as soon as he did, the scorpion stung him. The next day, the same thing happened. Again, the monk saved it. Again, he was stung. A young disciple, confused, asked, "Master, why do you keep saving it if it keeps hurting you?" The monk replied, "Because the scorpion is doing what is in its nature, and I am doing what is in mine." Think about that for a moment. Most of us, when someone hurts us or pulls away, we react from our wounds. We lash out, we beg, we shut down. We let fear or anger dictate our choices. But the monk's story reminds us, true mastery is responding from your nature, not from your pain. In psychology, there's a term for this: distress tolerance. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it or fix it. When you can pause in the middle of the sting, whether that sting is rejection, silence, or disappointment, you stop reacting out of fear. Instead, you respond from clarity. Here's the hard truth. Life will sting you. People will pull away. Words will cut. Silence will ache. But if every sting makes you abandon your center, you'll always be at the mercy of circumstance. The real strength is learning to breathe in that moment and remind yourself, this pain does not define me. My response does. So the next time you feel that urge to react, whether it's to chase, to argue, or to collapse, remember the monk, remember the pause, and choose to act not from your wounds, but from your true nature.
Before you send that message, before you make that call, before you react, there's one thing you need to do first. Bring your body back to safety. Because when your nervous system is hijacked, your mind will always tell the wrong story. Fear speaks louder than truth when the body is in chaos. So, how do you return to calm? Let me give you a simple toolbox. I call it the somatic reset. 4 little practices that can change everything. The first is 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale slowly for 8. Do this 3 or 4 times and you'll feel your heart rate drop. It's like pressing the reset button on your nervous system. Second, humming. Sounds almost silly, but try it. Hum gently for 60 to 90 seconds. That vibration stimulates your vagus nerve, signaling safety to your brain. Suddenly, your body knows, I'm not in danger. Third, take a slow walk. 10 to 15 minutes, no phone, just you and your steps. Walking rhythmically helps discharge tension and brings the body back into balance. And finally, create a 10-minute evening ritual. Maybe it's journaling a few lines, turning off screens, stretching, or soaking in warm water. A signal to your body that it's allowed to let go, to prepare for rest. These are small, simple acts, but they matter. Because if you reach out to someone while your system is still in panic, your words will carry that panic. If you decide from fear, you'll regret the choice. But if you reset first, you speak from clarity, you act from strength. So remember, don't just manage your thoughts, regulate your body. When your body feels safe, your heart can stay steady, and your words can finally match your wisdom.
Most people hear the word detachment and think it means not caring, shutting down, or walking away cold. But that's not true detachment. Detachment, in its real form, is freedom. It's the ability to love someone deeply while still holding your own center. Think of it like this: love with an open hand. If you grip too tightly, you harm the very thing you're trying to hold. If you open your hand completely, you may lose it. But if you hold gently, with respect and space, that love can breathe. That's what detachment looks like. Neither control nor indifference, but freedom. Here's the science behind it. When you're clinging, when you're desperate to control outcomes, your body shifts into survival mode. The sympathetic nervous system fires, your heart races, your mind spins. You can't think clearly because fear is in charge. But when you let go of the need to control, when you choose to love with openness, your parasympathetic system turns on. That's your rest and digest mode. Your breathing deepens, your thoughts settle, your heart becomes steady. And from that state, clarity rises. I once knew a woman who lived this shift. Her partner had a pattern of pulling away every few weeks. In the past, she'd chase him with long messages and endless explanations. But one day, she chose differently. She stopped waiting at the door of his silence. Instead, she nourished her own life. She walked, she painted, she laughed with friends. When he came back, he found her energy calm, steady, open, but not desperate. And that changed everything. This is the paradox of detachment. The less you try to force love, the safer it feels. The more you cling, the more it slips away. But when you love with an open hand, you give the other person space to rise, and you give yourself the freedom to remain whole, no matter what they choose.
Most people confuse loneliness with solitude. Loneliness is when you feel empty inside, even if you're surrounded by others. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice, a sacred space where you become your own home. It's not about being abandoned. It's about learning to stand so firmly in yourself that you no longer need to beg for belonging. Let me share a story. Lena had been married for 10 years. On the outside, it looked fine, but inside, she was slowly disappearing, always compromising, always silencing her own needs just to keep the peace. One day, she finally chose differently. She walked away. At first, the silence in her new home felt unbearable. Doubts whispered, "You'll regret this. You'll be alone forever." But over time, she began to transform that space. She painted her walls the colors she loved. She lit candles that reminded her of childhood. She played old jazz records and danced barefoot in her kitchen. Little by little, her home became a sanctuary. She wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. She had already chosen herself. That's the essence of solitude. It's not punishment, it's privilege. It's the ground where your voice, your values, and your vision can finally grow without interruption. And here's the paradox. When a woman learns to enjoy her own company, she becomes magnetic. She's no longer chasing crumbs of attention because she's already full. And people feel that fullness. It's unforgettable. So, the next time you find yourself alone, don't rush to fill the space with noise or company. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what do I truly want? Who am I when no one else is watching? In that stillness, you'll discover something powerful. Solitude isn't the absence of love. It's the place where love begins, within you.
Silence can be a mirror. Not a mirror that shows you the other person, but one that reflects yourself, your triggers, your fears, your inner strength. When someone you love suddenly pulls back, your brain reacts instantly. The amygdala, the part of your mind that scans for danger, sounds the alarm. Your chest tightens, your heart races, thoughts swirl. What did I do wrong? How do I fix this? In seconds, your body is preparing to fight, to flee, or to fawn. That's biology. That's survival. But here's the wisdom. There is always a space between stimulus and response, a sacred pause. And in that pause lies your freedom. You don't have to let your nervous system run the show. You can choose to breathe. You can choose to notice. You can choose not to react out of fear. I've seen this change people's lives. A man once told me how he almost ruined a relationship by panicking every time his partner grew quiet. He'd text 10 times, call repeatedly, try to force closeness. All it did was push her further away. But the day he learned to sit in the discomfort, just breathe, notice his racing thoughts, and wait, everything shifted. Instead of making her silence about his worth, he turned it into a practice of self-trust.
And eventually, she came back to him, not because he begged, but because his calm gave her safety. That's the gift of the pause. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's mastery. Choosing stillness over panic, clarity over chaos. So the next time silence enters, ask yourself, will I let this moment control me, or will I meet it with awareness? Because in the quiet space between what happens to you and how you respond, that is where your real power lives.
One of the most powerful shifts in love is learning discernment, the ability to see clearly without confusing things that only look like love. Because, let's be honest, many of us have mistaken attention for love, intensity for intimacy, or excitement for true compatibility. Think about it. Someone showers you with attention for a few weeks. It feels amazing, but attention fades. If there's no depth behind it, you're left chasing crumbs. Or maybe the chemistry is fiery, the passion electric, but passion without emotional safety burns fast, leaving only ashes. And excitement, it's thrilling in the beginning, but excitement alone doesn't build a life. That's where discernment comes in. Mature love isn't about the rush. It's about the steady choice of two whole people standing in their own fullness, choosing each other out of reverence, not out of need. Reverence says, I see you, I respect your depth, and I want to walk beside you. Not to complete me, but to share the road. I once spoke with a woman who told me, for years I kept falling for the spark. I thought the butterflies meant it was right, but the older I got, the more I realized the spark wasn't enough. What I needed was someone whose presence felt like home. That's the heart of discernment. Knowing the difference between what excites you for a moment and what sustains you for a lifetime. So here's the question. Are you looking for a high, or are you looking for a harbor? Because love built on attention and intensity will always demand more to keep the fire alive. But love built on respect, presence, and clarity, that's the kind of love that lasts. Discernment is not about being hard. It's about being clear. And when you're clear, you stop chasing illusions and start receiving what truly honors your soul. At the end of the day, you cannot control another person. You cannot force them to stay, to open up, or to love you the way you long for. But what you can control, what has always been within your reach, is your own energy and your own response. That is where your true power lives. Think of it as an inner axis, a center line that holds steady no matter which way the storm blows. Every time you feel distance, you have a choice. You can chase, react, and abandon yourself, or you can come back to your axis. Pause, regulate your body, communicate with honesty and boundaries, then simply observe. It really is that simple. Pause, reset your nervous system, communicate clearly, and watch what unfolds. If they return, you meet again at a safe frequency. If they don't, you are still whole, clear, and at peace. Either way, you win, because you did not lose yourself. I know this isn't easy. The mind screams for answers, the heart aches for closeness. But when you learn to anchor in your own center, you stop handing your peace over to someone else's moods. You become the steady ground that no silence, no withdrawal, no rejection can shake. And here's the paradox. People feel that energy. When you're rooted, calm, and self-respecting, others sense it, even without words. It creates safety. It creates attraction. But even more importantly, it creates freedom within you. So the next time someone pulls away, remember this: your power was never in pulling them back. Your power is in holding your axis, in remaining true to yourself, in choosing peace over panic, clarity over chaos. Because whether they stay or go, you will still be standing, whole, grounded, unshakable.